All right, today we're going to dive into the playbook of a true original, one of the most legendary business rebels out there, Sam Zell. We're talking about a self-made billionaire, a guy who basically pioneered the modern real estate industry and, most importantly, a man who built his entire empire on a really powerful and, as we'll see, a deeply personal philosophy of risk. And this quote right here, this is one of Zell's famous Samisms, and it is the key to everything. This isn't just some clever little saying. For him, it was an entire operating system. Seriously. At every single major point in his career, when the herd was stampeding in one direction, Zell would just stop, turn around, and start looking for the opportunity that everyone else was literally running away from. And this number, $39 billion. That is the price tag of his single greatest deal, the sale of his company, Equity Office Properties, to Blackstone back in 2007. At the time, it was the biggest leveraged buyout in history, and it was the perfect example of him just nailing the peak of the real estate market.
So you have to wonder, right? Where does a fearless, contrarian mindset like that even come from? Well, to understand the investor, you really have to understand the man. And to understand the man, we have to go back to a life or death decision made by his father, a decision that became the absolute foundation for everything that followed.
You see, Sam Zell's first and most important lesson in risk wasn't learned in a classroom or from a textbook. It was forged in the fire of his family's incredible escape from the Holocaust. So just picture this. It's August 1939. While so many people were dismissing the rising threat in Europe, Zell's father saw the writing on the wall. He packed up his family and got them on the absolute last train out of Poland, just hours before the Nazis invaded and bombed the railroad. Their journey was this nearly 2-year odyssey that took them all the way across Siberia to Japan, and then finally to America.
In that experience, it's a perfect real-world lesson in what investors call asymmetric risk. Zell's father just understood it in his bones. The downside of staying in Poland? It was catastrophic, losing everything including their lives. The downside of leaving? Well, it was hardship, it was uncertainty, but they had the potential for survival. And that taught Sam Zell his most fundamental rule. Always focus on the downside first. So armed with this really profound, inherited understanding of risk, a young Sam Zell started seeing opportunities just everywhere. This is where he begins to translate his father's survival instincts into actual business principles. I mean, his early ventures were just these little masterclasses in street-smart economics. As a kid, he saw this super simple supply and demand imbalance. He'd buy Playboy magazines for 50 cents in the city, then take them out to the suburbs where you couldn't get them and sell them for $3. A little later, when he was managing student housing, he totally ignored what parents said they wanted and instead built what the students actually wanted. His properties became the most popular in town by a long shot. So right there, from these early hustles, you can see his basic playbooks starting to form. Step 1, find that imbalance between what people have and what they want. Step 2, know your customer better than anybody else. And step 3, which is so key, go where there is no competition. Okay, so this next period, this is what would really define his public image and earn him that famous nickname. This is when the world started to panic, and Zell put his playbook into action on a massive scale. In the mid-1970s, the real estate market just completely imploded. There was fear everywhere, bad debt piling up. And as all the other investors ran for the exits, Zell did the exact opposite. He didn't see a graveyard. As he famously put it, he saw a dance floor. He went on an absolutely epic buying spree, scooping up billions of dollars in distressed properties. He would go to these panicked lenders and basically offer to take toxic assets off their hands for literally $1 down, plus a promise to manage the properties back to health. It was so audacious, totally contrarian, and you know what? It worked spectacularly. And this whole experience just cemented the core principles that guided him for the rest of his life. First, protect your downside, and the upside will take care of itself. Second, as he would say, you have to suffer from knowing the numbers. Make your decisions based on cold, hard data, not hype. Third, stick to simplicity and common sense. And finally, a lesson he learned from nearly going broke, always have cash. Liquidity is value. So now that he's mastered the art of buying distressed assets, Zell set his sights on something even bigger, transforming the entire real estate industry. Zell's key innovation here was perfecting the real estate investment trust, or what we call a REIT. He took his huge portfolio of physical buildings and packaged them into a company that anyone, you or me, could invest in just by buying a share of stock. This move turned clunky, illiquid bricks and mortar into liquid, transparent assets. It completely revolutionized the industry.
And the result of that innovation was just staggering. His flagship company, Equity Office Properties, became the largest office REIT in the entire country. And all of that growth culminated in that historic $39 billion sale to Blackstone, the ultimate grave dancer move, cashing out at the absolute peak of the market. But look, no career is just a straight line up. To get the complete picture of Sam Zell, we have to look at his biggest misstep, because honestly, it reveals just as much about his philosophy as his greatest success. You really have to see these two deals as two sides of the very same coin. The same year he sold Equity Office, he bought the Tribune Company. He applied the exact same contrarian principles, but this time he applied them to a fundamentally broken industry, media. His philosophy was the same, but he was buying into a structural decline right before the 2008 financial crisis hit and accelerated everything. The timing was catastrophic, and the company went bankrupt. But listen to how he reflected on that massive loss, over $300 million of his own money. He said he'd do the deal again. Why? Because at the time, he believed the potential reward justified the risk. He never, ever wavered from his core philosophy. You see, for Zell, it was never about being right 100% of the time. It was about consistently making bets where the upside was massive and the downside was something he understood and could accept.
So what can we really take away from the grave dancer's playbook? Well, a few big things. First, always be a contrarian, question what everyone else believes to be true. Second, obsess over the downside. Focus on what can go wrong, not just what can go right. Third, build a reputation where your word is everything because long-term relationships matter. And finally, you have to develop a thick skin. As Zell knew better than anyone, if you're going to go against the grain, you're going to face a lot of rejection. And all of this brings us to one final thought. Zell's entire career was built on seeing what other people missed simply because they were all looking in the same direction. So the question his legacy really leaves us with is this. In our own world, in our own industries, what's that one big left turn that conventional wisdom is missing today? What's the opportunity hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to stop and look right?